If you want your your second language is Japanese, just go with Japanese. If you want your second language is Mandarin, just go ahead. That's a personal choice of a person for a second language. And next, there are many alternatives to a second language. A person or community can choose a second language among other languages. So maybe there are so many languages in your community, maybe Japanese, Mandarin, or even Arabic and English. But your first language, for example, Bahasa, and you will choose your second language, for example, Japanese, it's up to you. But your friend beside you, behind you, in front of you, your neighbor, choose their second language is Mandarin or Sundanese. That's his choice. That's their choice. So each person has a different second language. Maybe the same second language or even a different second language. Okay. Now we go to what is psycholinguistics. So after you learn about some key terms related to like learning versus acquisition, first language, and then foreign language, second language, now you are going to learn about what psycholinguistics is. Psycholinguistics comes from psychology and also linguistics. There are two fields here. The first one is psychology and the second one is linguistics. Psychology itself, it studies scientifically the human mind. So you are going to learn about the human mind, okay? And the second one is linguistic. It's defined as the scientific studies of language. So can you make a conclusion what psycholinguistics is? Okay. Psycholinguistics is the combination of both psychology and also linguistics. Psychology and also linguistics. The goals are to study the psychological and neurobiological factors that enable humans to acquire, to use, to comprehend, and to produce language. So in psycholinguistics, you are going to learn about how humans acquire language, how humans use language, how humans comprehend language, and how humans produce language. Okay, is it interesting? Yeah, of course. Then, where is psycholinguistics located among other field? Okay, this one. So in the center of this linguistic, after that there is computational linguistics, phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, pragmatics. I think in linguistics vectors you have learned or you are still learning, I don't know. Linguistic and psycholinguistic, you can see in the left side. This psycholinguistic is located. Okay, we move to aspects of psycholinguistic: language production, language comprehension, and language acquisitions. So there are three aspects in psycholinguistic: language production, comprehension, and acquisitions. Language production itself means that how people produce language, how your friends produce language. That's language production. So in language production, there are three main component process. The first one is conceptualizing, and a conscious planning activity in which a communicative intention guides the construction of one or more messages. So conceptualizing is conceptual structures then can be formulated in the target language. So when people produce language, the first component or the first component process is they concept something. It's called conceptualizing. So when you are going to produce language, okay, sadar atau tidak, you concept something. Is that right? What I am going to say, what I am going to tell, that's conceptualizing. And the second one is formulating. The first process is conceptualizing, and the second one is formulating. Okay, in formulating means that generating natural language representation for messages. So you formulate something like the first grammatical encoding and phonological encoding. Means that you think about the structure of your language. After you concept, oh, I want to say this. After this, how is the structure? After this, how is the phonological encoding? That's the process of producing language. And articulating. After you concept, then you formulate, and after that you articulate. You produce the language. That's the last process of language production. First, you go to concept. After that, formulate. Then the last is articulate. So the goal is articulating. Primary spoken language and manual as a sign languages, and the secondary is written language. So when articulating doesn't mean the only is like a spoken language. No, you can say that articulating means as sign languages or written language. So you concept, you formulate, and you articulate. You can in a spoken or written language, or even in sign languages. That's how people produce language. So when I ask you, what is the process of language production, or what are the processes of people produce language, can you mention it? Can you explain it? Yes, of course. I think you have learned completely, and I hope you can explain and elaborate about language production. Now, language comprehension. How people understand spoken and written language. At first, you have learned about language production, and now you learn about language comprehension. Means how you understand spoken and written language. There is a process too. The first one is perceptual or auditory or visual or mapping linguistic input. Connected speech, a stream of manual signs or string of printed words onto some code that can be linguistically ports. So the first one, when you try to comprehend something, you have a perceptual thing. Means that you encoding something. Is it audio or is it visual? That's the perceptual. After that, after you got that information, after you got the language itself, you try to interpreting, inferring the intended meaning by identifying reference and computing a conceptual representation for the utterance on the basis of the result of parsing, along with prosody and contextual information. So the process is you identify first, like a perceptual, this is auditory or visual. If auditory, it means that you listen it. So that's the source of the language is from spoken source. And for visual, the source is from written language. You read something. Okay. For spoken, you listen something. That's perceptual. After that, after you getting information, you interpret that information. That's language comprehension. Now